And the quiet mind doesn't mean that it's completely silent, because that's like an impossibility for most of us, but that we're letting the chattering mind, the storytelling mind, be more way in the background here, or you might think of it as turning down the volume back when we had knobs for volume. So that practice of presence opens us up to that infinite love, as you were saying, that's always here. It's in all things. And it's between all of us. And so this practice of presence can also deeply impact our relationships and awaken love between us and awaken peace between us and all beings.
Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes Show. I am your host, Bola, Abimbola, frequency alchemist, intuitive life coach, and energy practitioner. Daily Soul Bytes is where we have guest authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs from the fields of spirituality, psychology, and leadership, sharing their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And we're now in season 5, and today we have a very special guest, Connie Habash, all the way from San Francisco in the United States. Welcome to the show, Connie.
Thank you so much, Bola. It's a pleasure to be here and to be with you.
Thank you for coming. I'm going to read your bio before we start, Connie. Okay. Reverend Connie L. Habash, MALMFT, is a licensed marriage and family therapist, an ecotherapist, a yoga and meditation teacher, interfaith minister, and the author of Awakening from Anxiety, a spiritual guide to living a more calm, confident, and courageous life. She offers retreats, workshops, psychotherapy, and ecotherapy online and in the San Francisco Bay Area. You can discover more about her on our website, www.awakeningself.com. That is so wonderful. Thank you for being here again, Connie. Could you tell us a bit about how you got to this place where you are now providing such a powerful message and teaching and practice in San Francisco? How did the stepping stones from your childhood to this point really guide you to this wonderful place?
You being a person who follows your intuition and the flow of energy in the work that you do will relate to that. I feel that that's the thread that has carried me from childhood to where I am, is that I listen to that inner knowing, that inner voice, that guidance, whatever one might want to call that. And I have followed where the energy seems to want to take me. As a child, I grew up in a very typical upper middle class family, not very emotionally connected to either of my parents, more so my father, not so much connection with my mother. And I think as a result of that, I turned to God. I turned to the divine. I felt this sense of there was something greater than me. Back then I called it God. Now I call it the divine or spirit, or because I tend to not want to use religious terms. So it's more broad and open for anyone. But I would talk to God, and I would look out the window at the night at the stars and wonder where I actually came from. I felt like this is a weird world and people are strange. And, I was the kind of person from a young age that was asking the deeper questions, like, why are we here? What's the purpose of life? What is after life? Why do people do what they do? Why do they feel the way that they feel? And I think that's very much eventually carried me into the field of psychotherapy, although at the time when I was a child, I would never have imagined I was to be doing what I'm doing now.
Are you looking for AAA grade jewelry or gemstones? Utter Spirit are those we will recommend. They actually do really wonderful jewelry. They have gifted me really nice lapis lazuli, which is really good for connecting with universal wisdom. And also this shungite beads, which come from Russia, and they're really aren't rare, because a lot of the times you get shungite beads which affect your skin, and these beads have been really nice. My son also loves them, and Otter Spirit, they give back to nature as well. So that is really nice that they are contributing to the environment, and they also send this intention cards. They're quite nice. This shungite card says, I cleanse myself from harmful energies. And the lapis lazuli card says, I am connected to the infinite wisdom of the universe. So there's information that goes with it, as well as them, producing really good quality jewelry. So I will recommend to connect with Otter Spirit. And the code will be going with this video. So check them out.
That was not anywhere in the realm of possibility. But I kept following those, I like to call them the divine's breadcrumbs, right? You just see the next one and you go to that, and then that leads you to the next one. And so I always knew that I was called to something spiritual, but I didn't know what. So once and my parents were pretty conservative and traditional and all that. So once I got to college and I got out of the house, and I felt like I could explore, I could try things and explore things that I was called to, I was interested in. And back then, this was the mid 80s. So identifying my age right now, but it was the new age. And there was lots of channeling and crystals and, all kinds of interesting things going on. And I started exploring tarot cards and all kinds of things, intuitives and energy. And right around the time, I also started some personal growth workshops and did some of my first inner work for myself. And then decided I would be a psychology major at school. But when I graduated, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew, there's some spiritual path calling me. And I started exploring Native American traditions and earth-based traditions and other kinds of philosophies. Carlos Castaneda's books were very influential to me back then. I had an amazing sociology teacher that exposed me to Tibetan Buddhism and Castaneda's work and Zen Buddhism and all kinds of things. But it's funny because I said, I'm definitely not going to become a marriage and family therapist. And then a year later, I'm applying to a program for counseling psychology for marriage and family therapy. So, and moved from Southern California up to Northern California to go to school. And the schools that I had been interested in were all spiritually oriented psychotherapy programs. Back then it was called transpersonal psychology, which is not so known now, but, transpersonal means beyond the personal. So it's beyond just like the ego and the personality and all of those constructs, but also like, who are we as divine beings, as consciousness? So in studying that, I found at the same time, found a little, back then there was no online looking up anything, right? You would have a little poster that's put up, at some bulletin board somewhere. And I saw there was a yoga class right down the street from me. So I thought, I'm going to go try that. And immediately felt like I was home. I was hooked. I was like I want to teach this. And so that started my path of yoga right at the beginning of graduate school. So yoga and then meditation, and my spiritual path. When I was exploring all kinds of things, I was exploring Taoism, I was exploring Hinduism and Buddhism and mystical Christianity and mystical Judaism, and really was fascinated by all different spiritual traditions in the world, and very much drawn to what is the common ground that they all share. What are the values, the ethics, the principles that all major religions believe in, such as nonviolence, truthfulness, compassion, kindness, practicing what you believe in, walking your talk, right? All of those things. And so in graduate school, not only was I immersed in psychological studies, but also more spiritual studies. And so, long story short, I graduated. I became licensed a few years later through my internships. I started teaching yoga classes. And then felt after a number of years of teaching yoga and teaching in yoga teacher trainings, I was really drawn to yoga philosophy. And all my classes were very spiritually oriented. People would say, oh, your class is like going to a therapy session, or your class is like going to church. Because I would weave in like the inner knowing with the yoga philosophy and spirituality behind it, with the poses and the breath and the movement and all of that. But I felt like I just wanted to focus more on the spiritual aspect of yoga, because yoga does mean union. It means this endeavor, this path, this practice to become one with that infinite consciousness, with all that is. And so that's what drew me to study interfaith. And I became an ordained interfaith minister. I think it was in 2014. And along that journey, at the same time, then I was called more and more to immerse in nature. And my daughter was very much called to that too. She was fairly young, and she was like, Mom, I want to do more things outdoors and more camping experiences. And I was drawn to that, but I was also kind of scared. I was also kind of afraid of some things about being out in nature. Like, is it safe? What about wild animals? What about, spiders and bugs and getting dirty and all of those things that growing up in a fairly conservative household, I wasn't really allowed to do. And so then my journey of immersing in nature and taking these deep nature connection courses and week-long experiences with my daughter of really being out in nature and community and connecting to the plants, the animals, the elements, and feeling the divine coming through all of that. My connection to spirit deepening through all of that. And then a few years later, I realized, gosh, I was already leading yoga retreats and things like that, but I started integrating nature into those retreats that I was taking people outdoors to connect to the divine. And then I did training to become an ecotherapist. And so that piece came in. So this journey has brought me through psychology, through spirituality, of exploring many different spiritual paths. I explored Afro-Brazilian and Egyptian traditions, and pagan traditions, all kinds of things. Finding that commonality and yoga and meditation as a foundation for that, and then bringing in the interfaith ministry and the ecotherapy. That's the whole thing that I do now and that I offer to people.
Thank you so much, Connie. I see so much synchronicity in what you're saying compared to my childhood as well. And I think it's always interesting how our childhoods do contain so much valid information that guides and tells us about what the future holds, what we have come to explore in this lifetime. So I love that you were also very curious about spirituality and God from early on, because not everybody is curious about the divine, about God. It's something that sometimes comes later in life, but when you're doing it from a very young age, it's quite powerful. And I love the way you are now working as an ecotherapist, and also using that spiritual knowledge as well, weaving that into your work. I would love to know a bit about your book, Connie. I know you are very focused on anxiety, and I would like to know more about your book and about how you consider anxiety to be different for those who are spiritual and for those who are not.
Yeah, because many of the principles in the book, I would say almost all of them actually, are universal and not necessarily, people can practice them without being spiritual particularly. But I try I really try to communicate everything that I share and I teach in a way that's more universal. I always actually believe that many atheists are actually spiritual. They're just not putting it in the form of a deity, but their higher principle might be truth or might be love or might be being a good person in the world. And I see that as a spiritual path. So, yeah, my book is called Awakening from Anxiety, A Spiritual Guide to Living a More Calm, Confident, and Courageous Life. And a lot of it is born not just out of my work with my clients, and I have examples of my clients working through anxiety and the various things that we did to help shift the response to anxiety. Because as you and I were talking a little bit earlier, and you said that, anxiety is something that's kind of with us. It's not just going to go away. And that's very much my philosophy. That's in my book, is that this is not about making it go away, because that's that's kind of our tendency with anything that's uncomfortable, unpleasant in life, is just make it go away. But actually, that is part of the richness and the full experience of life, is those challenging times and challenging moments. And we have all of our emotions for a purpose. Each of them serves a purpose. And so does anxiety. And when we can learn to not push away anxiety or label it as something bad or big or awful or scary, anxiety being scary, but something that actually has gifts for us and can bring us a transformation in our life. And we learn particular ways, which I talk about in the book, of how to be with that anxiety where it doesn't feel so overwhelming and where it does move through like a wave. I talk about a wave on the ocean, that anxiety is very much like that, right? There's a period where it's kind of building, the wave is getting bigger. And then there's a period where it's cresting over and it's crashing and then rolling into the shore, and then it recedes, right? And it softens back into the ocean. And so if we can learn to ride anxiety like a wave, or any emotion, actually, I mean, this can be applied to anger, this can be applied to sadness, then we can ride through the life cycle of that emotion. We feel it through the body. So I talk about these processes of being present and then embodied, feeling it through the body, practicing self-compassion in that process, and then feeling it through the body rather than thinking it in the mind. Because part of why emotions like anxiety continue to be perpetuated is because we're thinking them in our mind rather than feeling them in our body. And when we can really shift out of the mental stories that we continue to tell that keep us on that hamster wheel of feeling anxious, and we come down into the sensations of like, okay, my heart's beating really fast and I'm feeling tight in my jaw, and breathing with that and through that and being willing to stay with that, it does eventually shift. Just like everything in life, the Buddhists say that everything is change, right? Nothing stays the same other than consciousness, perhaps, right? So if we can stay with that process, it will, like a wave, like have its life cycle and shift into something else. And then we realize, oh, I'm bigger than the anxiety. The anxiety is something that simply flows through me. And when I can allow that process, then it doesn't have power over me. I'm more in my true divine self. And so the book talks about that whole process. And it also talks about, some of the mistakes that spiritual people make that increase their anxiety. So that's kind of a synopsis of a good chunk of the book.
Thank you. Thank you, Connie. I totally agree with you that anxiety is always, always there. And it's, there are parts of us. I believe in my work, I have this quantum Reiki soul cycle awakening container that is an 8-week program, and it's really supporting my clients to understand the different parts of self and how that physical ego self has a number of different versions, and some of those versions will be very anxious, burnt out. There are also versions of self that are much more masters in emotional intelligence. And we can come to see these different parts of us and hold space for each and every one as they emerge. And I love what you said, Connie, about how things flow. There is always that change in dynamic. This reality we're in, the experiences we're having, nothing stays the same. The only constant is the divine, that infinite wisdom, that infinite life force within us. So when we come to really accept that things come and go, feelings come and go, there are different parts of me. I need to have tools. I need to have things that I know will work for me or have worked for me in the past, things that I'm drawn to at this time. And we can come to understand the power that we have in shifting through this time, because it's really about understanding our own intuition and what is the thought bringing to us at this time, that ego thought, the patterns, the intellectualization. What is all of that bringing to me? And how can I begin to have much more coherence between these different parts of me? I'd love to ask you, Connie, what are the kind of key steps or key things that you will recommend or you use to overcome or to manage or to hold space for anxiety and other kind of lower frequency emotions?
The first practice is presence. And I'll share how I see what presence actually is. But I want to say, because I don't think I completed my sentence earlier, that it's not just from my clients, but my own experience with anxiety. So I practice this stuff myself, and it works for me as well. And so presence has been a huge awakening of awareness for me. So the heart is open and receptive. That means we're willing to be here just as it is. And the quiet mind doesn't mean that it's completely silent, because that's like an impossibility for most of us, but that we're letting the chattering mind, the storytelling mind, be more way in the background here, or you might think of it as turning down the volume, back when we had knobs for volume, turning the volume down on the thoughts and letting the mind take more of a back seat and just being quiet and receptive right here, right now. And when we come into this present moment right now, we might realize that the stories are not about the present. They're not about, me lifting up this teacup into my hands. They're about what we think is going to happen, in 5 minutes or next year, or what went on in our life earlier. Because this present moment right now, it's very simple. It's usually ordinary, and it's usually quiet for the most part, and it's usually relatively safe. I'm not saying that it is for everybody on the planet in this moment right now, but for most of us, especially for you and me, Bola, sitting right here, and probably for our listeners, if we come really into this moment right now, we're sitting, or maybe someone's walking, listening to this podcast, and there's not a lot else going on. What tends to drive the anxiety is the stories of what we tell about what we think is going on, or might go on, or what could happen in the next moment, or what happened the other day with this other person. So coming back to right here, right now is the first thing that's, number one, going to start to calm us, because I realize none of that's probably happening here in this moment. And also gives us the ability to be with the anxiety without driving it with the thoughts. It gives us the ability to be with, okay, in this moment right now, I'm here, I'm sitting at my desk, I'm talking with you, but perhaps maybe I'm feeling tension in my shoulders, or my stomach might be in a knot, wherever someone is listening to this podcast. And so then you're with that, and you come into the next part of the practice, which is embodiment. So I come into my body rather than into my head all the time. Anxiety is driven by the head almost all the time. It's driven by what we're thinking. And when I come into my body and actually let myself feel like, oh, okay, tightness in my stomach, and be with that and breathe with that, the body will actually be soothed and calmed by us coming into it. So when we're up in our head and we're up into thinking and spinning thoughts and all of that, we actually aren't really in our body, right? We're somewhere else. We're in our imagination or we're in our thinking processes. The body doesn't feel very secure when we're not actually in it. It's kind of like if you're in a car, of course, nowadays we have Waymo here in California, which is cars that drive themselves without a driver. But if you're in a regular car and no one's driving it and it's just going along the road, you'd be kind of anxious, wouldn't you? Right? I would be pretty anxious because there's no one there to steer the ship, to drive the car, right? Our body feels very similarly. Our body actually has intelligence of all the cells in it. They're all divine intelligence in every cell, and they are all in service to the consciousness that we are that should be embodied, feeling our body here in the body. And so when we bring ourselves from that thinking process down into the body more, and being present here, the body will start to calm down just from that, just from it sensing, oh, okay, somebody's home. Someone's looking out for my safety. Someone's taking care of me. Someone's moving me through life now and not just up in the head. And then the third component, and all of this leads up to really being able to feel the emotions rather than think them, is self-compassion. Is being able to be here with those sensations like, oh, my pounding heart, and holding it with care. So compassion involves care. It involves presence, being present here, kindness toward ourselves, not judging ourselves, and an openness to understand. Okay, pounding heart, what are you about? What are you trying to express? What are you wanting to bring to my attention? And then to be of service to that in some way. Those are the components of self-compassion. They're actually the 3 steps of the 7 in my book, of how to move through and actually not just heal or move through or be able to handle anxiety better, but to awaken spiritually from the experience of anxiety.
Connie, thank you for that explanation. I love the way you talked about how there is a coming home that happens when we bring our attention out of the head and into the body. And there are a number of different ways that we can do this. And I know that you mentioned that grounding, the breathing, and there are so many different modalities. And I really think healing, when we look at how do we all heal, there are thousands of modalities that are available for us to do this, but the bottom line is they're all bringing us home into that place of calm. The nervous system is coming to a place of calm, that parasympathetic nervous system.
Exactly.
And that is what allows us um, to feel the presence, because I really believe that presence is an essence of being, because you may be in a war zone and you can feel presence in that war zone. The reality that has been created, that we have co-created, may be totally chaotic, but somehow we sense that essence within us. We're not thinking of the thoughts of the past or the future, because anxiety tends to be very linear, tends to
Mm-hmm.
look at, and you mentioned that about the thoughts of the past or the present or the future rather, that essence of being within, because sometimes we think that that infinite wisdom is outside of us, God or universal energy or whatever we are praying to or engaging with is outside of us. But when we really come to, from my experience and from the teachings that I have resonated with, there is definitely an internal recognition that goes on, and that in itself has a healing power within it. So I resonate with the use of presence as a modality. That is a very simple thing, but it is not easy to hold on to. And this is where I know that you use a number of different modalities. You use ecotherapy. And I'd love to hear more about that because it's one thing for us to touch presence on a Monday morning or a Monday afternoon, and we can then find ourselves in that chaotic, attentive place where we're attending more to the chaos on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And we need to have a number of different modalities that
Absolutely.
allow us to continue to stay on that path of holding that essence of presence. And I know that you use ecotherapy, so I'd love to hear a bit more about how you use that with your clients.
Yes. And you're right, Bola, that it is hard presence is extremely simple and it's hard to sustain. And so the idea is that we don't expect ourselves to always be present, to not put that pressure on ourselves, but to know that we can tap into it and we can come back at any given moment in time, at any time that we remember, and we can allow ourselves to stop and practice being present. It's there. Like you said, it's always the infinite presence of the divine is always there. It's within us and it's in everything around us. And so one of the ways to really help us with that presence, and like you said, I also use a lot of different modalities other than what I'm talking about today to assist my clients, but nature is present. The tree outside my window, there's a lovely pine tree and there's also a lovely coast live oak. They are present. That is what they are. Things in nature are not worrying about the future, as far as we can tell, or ruminating over the past. They're being right here, right now. They're being their treeness. They're being the rock. They're being the rain as it comes down. They're fully in the present moment. The animals are fully in the present moment. And and even when, like, if you take the example of maybe a deer that was chased by a mountain lion or something like that, and of course it has some trauma and it has some anxiety, they literally, their bodies shake. You were talking about like restoring, the parasympathetic nervous system coming out of sympathetic response, which is fight or flight or freeze. They have a way of shaking that off, and then they are back into the present moment. If you've ever watched deer graze, or gazelles, any grazing animal, horses, if they sense a threat, they're up in the present moment. Where is it? What's going on? When they recognize it's not there or it's gone, back to presence, back to grazing. So when we spend time out in nature, and that I'm aware that there's a bit of privilege with that because some people they're in a city or something, they don't have nature accessible right away to them. They may not be able to take transportation there, but we can do it even just looking out the window at the sun or the snow or the rain or a plant that we have. Or I often will have people watch or listen to, but watch a video that has sound of like a trickling stream. And you can feel the presence in that. The stream is simply being the stream. It is constantly present and flowing. And taking that time, and maybe some people might have a balcony, but if you can, out in a garden or out in a local park or out somewhere on a trail, sit for a while and just be there. Obviously where it's safe, not where you're going to get, a runner is going to run into you or something like that. But you find a rock or a log or take a little chair with you and sit out there and simply be with everything being present with you. Nature can teach you. The sunshine can teach you about presence. The plant can teach you about presence because they embody it. And that will help. That will, number one, help regulate the nervous system. It will help stimulate the vagus nerve. It's another way of, calming sympathetic nervous system into parasympathetic, where we have that rest and relaxation and digestion is in the parasympathetic nervous system, as you were talking about, and show us what it's like for the mind to become more quiet. So if you can sit out in nature or somewhere connecting with something, like if it's your house plant, for 15 to 20 minutes, ideally. If you only have a couple minutes, then you do that. But about 20 minutes we found from the nature connection communities that I learned this from is enough time for you to really sink in and immerse and for the mind to quiet down and also for nature to start to embrace you and receive you. So birds will come closer because you're being still and quiet in presence. And you'll start to notice more things as you sit there longer and receive more gifts from nature and the divine. And so when I take people out for ecotherapy, usually it includes, I do a lot of groups and retreats. It includes doing some sit spot time where we go and immerse in that. And consistently, that is people's favorite thing. It's the most revealing thing. It's the thing that transforms them. And that they take home in their heart the most. But I also do all kinds of other ecotherapy things where you can have a conversation with a tree because we listen inwardly to that intuitive knowing between you and the tree, where you might spend some time immersing in your senses, the smells, the feeling of the air, the breeze blowing against your skin, the sound of the rain or leaves rustling, or a bird. And those senses will also bring us back more into the present moment. So there's many different kinds of ecotherapy practices. You can do them. I'm looking around here on my desk for maybe some sort of stone. So you can actually, hold something like this and get a sense of connecting to this very simply without even getting into esoteric meaning of what the stone means, like the solidness of that, the groundedness of that, the simplicity of it being fully present as this stone. So practices that I do with people both indoors and outdoors, online and in person, with the ecotherapy are very transformative.
Thank you, Connie. This is so true. This is something I wrote about actually in my book, Daily Soul Bytes, which is it was published by Bible Press, a division of Ahaz in 2023. I wrote it I channeled it in 2020, and there are 31 nuggets in the book, daily, soul bites I call them, and one of them is talking about nature. And, it's talking about how when we look at the seas, the clouds, they have a life force within them. There are no batteries in the waves. There are no batteries in the clouds. They have a natural movement within them. And we also have a natural movement within us. That life force that we see in the leaves and the clouds, in the waves, on the seas, also lies within us. And this is something that we can just get a feel for. We can practice. Where is this life force? And we will feel that current within us that is so alive. And this is what I know you were talking about when you could talk about when, you're going with your clients, into the community and you're getting them to sense the life force that is already around them. And they can begin to connect the life force that is also within each and every one of us. This is the life force that is present. It's the essence of presence. And I love that you use that as a very powerful modality in your work. Are your retreats for a week or 2 weeks? Tell us a bit about what anyone who is listening to this may want to may get a sense of what can they expect when they come to one of your ecotherapy retreats.
First, I want to respond to what you said about the life force because it's so true. And when we immerse in nature, we not only discover and feel that life force within us that is in all beings, but we also start to feel a belongingness, that we are not separate from nature, we are not separate from the planet and that life force. We're part of all of that. We're part of all that is, all of that life around us. We are part of the bird. We are part of the tree. It is part of us. The rain is part of us. And I think that's so needed right now, this sense of belonging on the planet, because as a species, we have really separated ourselves from nature and from the very planet that we not only live on, but we are 100% dependent on for everything, right? But that we're part of that. We're part of this greater community of nature. It's our home. And we've lost, many of us have in this existential angst of like, why am I here? And I don't belong here. But we do. We've forgotten it. And spending time out in nature, we start to feel that belonging again. So I just wanted to share that. And that's something that we definitely experience on the retreat. So I have 1 day retreats, I have weekend retreats, and then I have 5 day retreats, like the women's retreat. I call it the Women's Spiritual Pilgrimage to Mount Shasta, which I have in the summer. So it's coming up in July. And we really take time through yoga and meditation and through nature immersion and just having quality time together as a community, and having fun too, doing activities that are delightful and make us laugh and connect us to each other. We start to come home again. That feeling of being home on the planet, being home in community, and being home as all divine children of that infinite loving presence. So all of my retreats have some element of that. So whether it's a 1 day or a weekend or a 5 day, they all incorporate all of those aspects, the yoga, the meditation, the deep nature connection, and deeply connecting in community. So I usually have a 1 day retreat a couple times a year, a weekend retreat at least once a year, and then the 5 day retreat at least once a year, in various places around here in Northern California in the Bay Area, and also looking at expanding beyond that to other locations.
Thank you, Connie. I know that, we all have different modalities, but I know that anyone who is resonating with this will definitely feel that connection, to embody a lot more. It's a journey. It's about deeper and deeper embodiment of presence using the modalities that we are coming across. And this is about synchronicity. So I'm so glad that that you're sharing this. I do want to ask about some of the other things that you do. I know that you are now, at this age, and so am I. We are, by the time you get into your late 50s, 60s, 70s, you know that you're in a very different threshold of
Mhm.
time, and you begin to feel different. The life force within begins to ask for different experiences, begins to ask you to do things in a different way. I'd love to know your perspective around this and what you have termed the sacred path of aging. Tell us a bit about
Yes.
that.
Yeah. So last year in 2024, I turned 60, and I was leading up to that. The couple years before that, I was 58 and 59. I really felt this calling to reclaim aging, to reclaim this time in our life where we actually come into our power in many ways, but we also step on a different kind of spiritual journey, I think. And it's a journey that is divine design. This was intentional in our incarnation, that we have a body and that we go through all the lovely and interesting and exciting things about a body, and then that the body slowly prepares us for returning to the realm of spirit by the aging process. I mean, if we're fortunate, right, we get to age. If we're blessed and we have a long life, right? And so there's spiritual intention and purpose to the aging process, and that's why I call it the sacred path of aging. And no, it's not easy, right? Because it's very humbling for all of us, I think. I don't know anyone who hasn't been affected by the aging process of the graying hair and the wrinkles and the changes in your joints and your energy and all of that. But it's turning us back to our spiritual self, and it awakens divine qualities in us should, if we choose it to be a sacred path of aging. Some people will choose to go kicking and screaming and complaining into aging, and I understand. But if we choose consciously, like, this is a sacred path, this is a powerful time in my life, and I'm going to embrace becoming an elder as something sacred in our society. We've unfortunately our society's become very youth oriented, and awesome for the youth, and they're important too. But that we we have so much to contribute and give in this aging process, but it teaches us humility, right? One of the I think the great spiritual principles and qualities that we all need to develop, but particularly I think at this time in our history on the planet, is being humility comes from I think it's a Latin word, humus, the humus, the earth, the soil itself, that we are to be as the soil, that like we're not separate from everything else, we're not above anything else, we're actually all part of that sacred soil of the planet. So that humility of, okay, like this body is going to go away and it is going to, get older. So my body's changing, but what is awakening with me or has awakened through this life journey that I've been on that is here to share, that I can share with others? And that's where, we typically associate wisdom as one of those divine qualities of aging. But also, compassion is awakened by when we go through challenges and suffering, and all of us have had it to one degree or another, especially as you age. You're going to experience it one way or another, even if your body stays healthy for your whole life. People are going to die around you. It's just the nature of life, right? So that compassion can be awakened within us, and presence, right? Because aging, I think, really more than any other part of our life, when we get to be 55 plus, is reminding us this precious moment. This moment is sacred and precious, and we will never have it again. Shall we be here with this moment right now? Shall we really make the most of every moment that we have remaining on this planet? And there's so many other spiritual qualities that are awakened through the aging process. And so I take people through a 7-week course where we explore them together, and we do some of those practices that help us tap into these qualities that they may have been developed at other times in our life, but they're very uniquely focused in the aging process that we have the opportunity to go deep into. And of course, connecting to the divine. I feel that that's returning to our connection with that infinite presence. That is the greatest purpose of the aging process. So that and many other qualities are awakened through this. And then we can journey into aging consciously and with maybe even enthusiasm, but certainly with purpose. There is a divine purpose to this, and I'm going to fulfill that purpose through this aging process.
There is definitely a change in what happens, what happens to the body, because before, in our 20s, 30s, 40s, the body seems to be on autopilot. And you don't really need to think much about it. You just need to carry on with the ambition and the lifestyle. There is not much much need to really spend time understanding your body, getting to care for it in a much more intense way, as you now are called to do when you are in your 50s and 60s and moving on. There is definitely not a decline, but it's a deepening of a relationship that we come to have with that physical body, calling for more intentional habits. And I always say it's not what happens, but how we respond to it. Different parts
Absolutely.
of our body will call for different things. And we are empowered beings, and we can come to remember that, yes, I can get help. I can motivate myself by engaging with the right communities, or communities that are calling to me regarding this particular part of my body. And things pass. The body does age, but we can come to understand what it needs. There's a simplicity that we can come to have about our bodies. It needs this today, it needs that today. But I definitely think that aging process calls for a deeper relationship with the body, as well as an understanding of that wisdom that Connie, you have pointed to. This is that intuitive wisdom that we come to discover within our own self, that true self within us. And I would like to hear your perspective, Connie, on how you stay grounded in your true self, because this is, we all have a lot of things that we do on a daily basis, as I just said, in terms of the physical body.
Mm.
We may have a number of projects we're involved in, and staying connected on a Monday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, there is a need to have that understanding of constant connection, that surrender, until a time comes. I believe a time does come when it's happening much more without effort. Um, but there is a need to begin to become much more intentional about it at some point. I'd love to hear your views, Connie, about that.
Mm. Well, I very much practice the things that I talk about that I work with my clients on. I spend time in nature. One of the things, actually, as you were talking, that was sparked for me, that's related to the aging process and how I stay grounded and how I stay connected. Um, Aging reveals the gifts of slowing down. When we're young, we're running around doing all kinds of things and, staying up all night and being busy. And, as we're in our 30s and 40s, being productive and all that. And we still are in our 50s and 60s, but we may not realize the gifts of slowing down. And in slowing down, that's where we discover presence. And if we don't slow down enough to really be here right now, we can't really feel the divine presence. We can't really effectively listen to that inner knowing. It takes some slowing down and stopping and pausing here, um, and noticing what's going on inside myself and what is coming to me, from that inner knowing, which for me is often bodily. It's often through sensations or a feeling of like alignment or tension, right? Like if I'm feeling aligned and my body feels like it's flowing, then I feel, okay, the energy's carrying me in this direction and this is where I'm guided to go. And when I'm feeling tense or when I'm feeling agitated or whatever, okay, there's something that's not quite in alignment here and not in flow. Excuse me. Um, Frog in the throat. Um, so slowing down is very, very helpful to me. And of course, I do practice meditation. And I do other spiritual practices. For me, chanting is very, very effective and helpful for me in kind of quieting my mind and connecting me to something greater. It often helps, to have like a mantra or a song. For some people, it's singing or something to help them be focused. So those things, but really, like, nature for me is the biggest gift of just going out and breathing in the air and smelling the freshness, smelling the wet ground after rain. We've had a lot of rains here recently. Um, Touching the bark of a tree or feeling the dew on the grass. Just simple things. And even like, smelling my tea, being present when I'm eating, those things. And then I do grounding and centering practices energetically. I know you work with energy, Bola, so, really feeling that sense of energetically grounding and connecting to the earth and also connecting energetically to the cosmos and the divine that way. I feel the divine is in the earth and in the cosmos, but having both of those connections, feeling my energetic center, drawing my energy back into my body when it gets scattered out to everything, all the things I worry about, all the things I'm doing, all the projects, all the people in my life, like drawing all that back into my center. Those are things that really help keep me um, grounded, present, connected to the divine, connected to flow, connected to my inner knowing or my intuition. I think that's what you were asking about.
Love that. Definitely. Honestly, these are the practices. I'm also looking forward to my beach retreat coming up this weekend, just going away by myself to
Yeah.
enjoy my time with water. I'm very much into water, and this is how I connect the most, even though on a daily basis I'm connected in my garden with my with nature, the trees, the plants, the soil. It's free. There is a free access to that infinite love that we can really come to experience. No matter how busy our day to day is, we can develop much more, some more simplified moments, times in the day that we can come to connect, and we strengthen our own self. We strengthen the rest of the day, the rest of the week, when we continue to have these practices, and that relationship deepens. That relationship, that embodiment of true self deepens as we go. Do you have any final words for us today about your work, your book, about anxiety? Anyone listening to this, you've shared so much, but I want to give you a chance to share any final words before we go today.
Well, what's coming to me right now is, as you talked about how that love is here. When we're truly present, right here in this moment, with you, with the tree, with ourselves, presence is love. Love naturally arises when we're right here in this moment as it is. And I think that we know that because when someone else is really present with us, is really listening, really here with you, no agenda, just really caring and appreciating you in this moment and being right here, we feel loved. And so that practice of presence opens us up to that infinite love, as you were saying, that's always here. It's in all things. And it's between all of us. And so this practice of presence can also deeply impact our relationships and awaken love between us and awaken peace between us and all beings. That if we could practice being more present with one another and yes, with the people in our lives, but with strangers. Imagine the possibilities. Imagine the bridges that can be built between different people and different beings, between the humans and the more than human world, between us and our neighbors, other nations, other cultures, races, etc. That if we can learn to be present with each other and therefore really being open and receptive to who that being is that is right here with us, and having that other being feeling loved just by that presence, that can transform our world a little bit at a time. And if nothing else, transform our own lives.
Thank you so much, Connie. Where can people find you when they want to connect with you?
The best place is my website, Awakening Self, like yourself, awakeningself.com. And on there, I have all of my online and in-person events. I have my book. I have my blog. I have tons and tons of blogs and also articles that I've written over the last 26 years. So lots of resources there. And I have my Awakening Women of the Earth community, which is a free online community. We meet once a month and we do presence practice. We do other kinds of practices to connect with one another and explore themes together. And we celebrate the seasonal changes, the spring equinox, summer solstice, etc. So I have free offerings, and then I have of course, I do psychotherapy and I do spiritual mentoring with people around the world. So there's all kinds of different offerings there that people are welcome to check out. And I would love to connect with you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Connie.
Thank you for having me, Bola. It's been a pleasure and a delight to be with you.
Thank you. Pleasure and delight from me as well. Thank you so much. I want to thank our audience for joining us today. Those who haven't subscribed, I invite you to subscribe. And I do want to thank our subscribers, our growing community. I mean, soul space healing, daily soul bites is really not about fixing ourselves. It's about restoring coherence. It's about welcoming that wholeness of being within each and every one of us. And it is a journey. Nobody comes to that place where they no longer have any ups or downs. It's really about how we respond, how we transform, and how we stay empowered in our day to day. So thank you for joining us again this week, and we look forward to seeing you on the very next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes Show. Bye-bye.